Right now on Movie Review Talk, Denzel Washington returns for Equalizer 2. Here we go again indeed with Mamma Mia, and 8th grade goes to the head of the class. Hey movie fans, welcome to Movie Review Talk for Collider. I'm your host, Scott Movie Mantz. Every week we've reviewed the new movies, picked something on Blu-ray or streaming that you might have missed, and here's the beauty of it. Spoiler-free, ladies and gentlemen. You do not have to worry about spoilers. You can watch to your heart's content. Every week I'm joined by two guest critics, and joining me this week, very, very excited, the man, he is the chief film critic for Variety, Peter Debruge.
You didn't tell me the spoiler rule. Don't you know that's my middle name? You're Spoiler Debruge.
Spoiler Debruge. Well, not today.
Okay.
But very excited because, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen you at screenings, and then, like, I wake up the next morning, your review is already posted. Fastest writer in the West. Very, very impressive.
Thank you, Scott.
All right. Also joining us is Witney Seibold. He is the contributor for IGN. He is also the co-host of critically acclaimed, the B Movies podcast, and canceled too soon. Please welcome Witney Seibold, my good friend. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's Seibold, by the way.
Seibold.
Seibold.
Seibold. Good to know.
Rhymes with spoiler.
Now there's a spoiler.
Well, my middle name is Seibold.
Very, very excited. Let's get right to it. Our first movie is 8th Grade. Written and directed by Bo Burnham, starring Elsie Fisher and Josh Hamilton. This is about a socially awkward but internet-savvy 8th grader. Last week of 8th grade before she graduates the big time to high school. Let's start, Whitney. What did you think of 8th grade?
I think 8th Grade is one of the best films of the year, not to put too fine a point on it. Bo Burnham, a stand-up comedian in his late 20s, was able to somehow put his camera right in the eye line of a 13-year-old girl and sympathize with every little tiny trial she's going through is kind of miraculous. It's rare that you see a teen film that isn't about nostalgia, and this is very much about what it is to be in the 8th grade today, right now, on Instagram, facing all of these trials and facing all of the insecurities that poor young Kayla, the lead character, has. I was crying constantly throughout this movie. It's unbelievably terrific. It's really hard for me to stress.
Okay, Peter, how about you?
Crying and laughing too. I mean, Bo Burnham is a really gifted comedian. Here he exercises this kind of empathy gene that you don't always realize that comedians have, and the idea that I mean, of course we want more movies about the 8th grade girl experience from female directors. We keep talking about this, but I think it's a point of admiration that there is a young man who chooses to make his feature debut by identifying with a character who he must have known growing up but had to sort of put himself in the shoes of. It's a terrific performance, and it never goes to that really, I mean, you're wincing in anticipation of everything awful that could happen to her, sexting that could go wrong, or like, being assaulted, or these kind of stories that we've seen too many times in movies. And this movie kind of, she navigates that. It sort of never goes so dark. It doesn't turn Todd Solondz on us. It's a great film.
That was the other, Clark, Larry Clark.
Yeah.
That was, his movies are a little like disturbing, but what I liked about 8th grade more than anything else is how raw it is, how honest, how unflinching, but also funny.
And
also
relatable.
Heartfelt.
I mean, really
very
relatable.
Yeah. And I have to say, Elsie Fisher, an amazing breakthrough performance. They didn't get some actress who was like 22 years old playing an 8th grader. They didn't get some like model playing an 8th grader. She feels very genuine. She's not perfect. She has a acne problem, and there's a lot of close-ups on her face about it. It felt really honest. And when I first saw it back at Sundance, and I have to say, like, movies like 8th Grade are what Sundance is all about.
Yeah, this is what you hope to discover at a festival like that. Absolutely.
And it is a discovery for Bo, for Elsie, and Josh Hamilton as her father, Kaylee, the character's name. He was like the nicest dad, maybe even better and nicer than Michael Stuhlbarg in Call Me By Your Name.
Or like Patricia Arquette in Boyhood. It's that kind of relationship between parent and child.
But he was very kind. He was open to listen, but they still had a really awkward, believable relationship. There's a wonderful scene where they're driving to a mall together, and he is the father is elated that his socially awkward daughter is finally going to hang out with some friends. And he tries to express that to her, and she is mortified the entire time.
Everything
and she tries
he
to
does.
deflect
Yeah.
everything he does. He never quite says the right thing. You can tell they love each other, but they don't know how to talk to each other. And even though he is really trying hard to be a good dad, I don't think he's quite all the way there. And I think that makes his character a lot more dynamic and a lot more interesting. So when he finally has a moment near the end of the film where he does manage to say kind of the right thing at the right time, it feels like this wonderful catharsis between the two of them. And that's kind of what parenting is.
And Elsie, she is very awkward. You put her in a social situation, and she's extremely shy, yet she does these YouTube videos where she exudes so much confidence, and she's giving all this advice, and she's clearly not following her own advice, and she calls herself on it. You know, like, I wish I could follow my own advice here. And also just the way that schools are these days. Like, they have that drill for, in case there's a shooter, you know, like, can you imagine, like having to go through that? Like, it really, like, this is what it's like.
8th grade was hard enough. I mean, like, 8th grade today, I mean, like, back in my day, you know, it's like, this is a reminder kind of, you know, what today's teenagers are going through. And, I mean, there's a terrific scene where she does karaoke, and, like, it's just another one of those ones where your heart breaks, and yet you feel so much for her. She wants to be like and the actress is, you know, a relatable, real young woman, and it's like that's such a great thing to see in an over-sexed, over-glamorous kind of world, you know. She's aspirational but real.
You know, the other thing I felt like when I first saw it at Sundance, I thought, oh, it's like this year's Lady Bird. But Lady Bird was a more polished film, and I loved Lady Bird. You know, this one's much more raw and unflinching in a way. You know, doesn't really pull any punches. And, you know, I do love the relationship between the father and the daughter. You know, like, she just, like, I remember when I was in 8th grade, like, my parents annoyed the hell out of me. But I loved them, and I know that they loved me, and that relationship felt very, very, very genuine. What is your letter grade for 8th grade?
Well, you know, there's a common thread, by the way. Scott Rudin produced both Lady Bird and 8th grade. So he's got, I mean, he's got an eye for this kind of material. He develops writers, and it's like, you know, you can just follow the filmography of Scott Rudin to see interesting projects. But I'd give this movie an A-, I think.
How about you,
A lot of sympathy for teenage girls, I suppose. I would give it an A. This was really one of my favorites of the year. This has been a pretty great summer for a lot of these smaller indie films, just sort of slipping in right here in July, because just recently we had Sorry to Bother You, which was another one of the best films of the year. Now we have 8th grade, and we're going to be talking about another one that I was very fond
that's
of.
very true. It's also the year of the documentary between the Ruth Bader Ginsburg documentary, the Fred Rogers documentary, and Three Identical Strangers, which...
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah.
Moly, is that a great movie. All right, let's move on to Equalizer 2, directed by Antoine Fuqua, starring Denzel Washington, Melissa Leo. Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington, this is their 4th time working together. This is the first time either of them or both of them have ever done a sequel, and Denzel Washington is back as Robert McCall, takes the law into his own hands to help the oppressed and the underprivileged, but this time, yes, it is personal. Peter, what did you think of Equalizer 2?
I think these movies are just really unpleasant. I mean, it's I mean, on one hand,
they're brutally violent.
Yeah, and it's just like, I mean, I like action movies, and they're really creative, and they find a way to, like, bring in weather. You know, like, it was like raining indoors in the finale of the first movie, you know, at a Home Depot store, and now it's like in the middle of a hurricane. But I mean, it's just like, it's horrible things happen to people, and then this kind of nasty person comes and cleans it up and makes it worse. It's just like while rescuing cats from trees and returning loved ones to their estranged whatever. I mean, it's the whole thing is just it makes you feel gross afterwards. You know.
How about you?
I like the character more than I like the film.
Yeah.
I think Robert McCall, he's sort of like the Marvel character, the Punisher, just with a little bit more heart. He's not just interested
and no costume.
And no costume. There's no, like, he has the whole bloody vengeance thing down, but he also has a bit of a civic-minded streak that I find really appealing. The actor from Moonlight, what is his name? who plays Miles in The Equalizer 2.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
so
sure.
He's sort of an at-risk youth who lives in his building, and a lot of The Equalizer 2 is devoted to looking after this character, making sure he stays in art school, making sure he doesn't join a gang, and the scenes and interactions between Robert McCall and this character are fascinating and great, and Denzel Washington acts the hell out of those things. And then it goes off into this weird side plot about international assassins and people getting stabbed brutally in hotel rooms and having their heads slammed against door jams. And those are the parts that I found kind of unpleasant because it doesn't match what The Equalizer is all about.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting with Antoine Fuqua and Denzel Washington. Of course, Fuqua directed Washington to lead actor Oscar win for Training Day. This is their fourth time working together, but a great analogy about Robert McCall sort of being like his own version of the Punisher. That's very, very accurate. And the action scenes I felt were brutal, like they were very violent. And I mean, look, I mean, that's this kind of movie it is. But
someone gets harpooned in the face. It's pretty gross.
But the Denzel Washington, he's like really, you know, he's a kick-ass action hero. But
and he's, how old is he? He's 66 or 67 years old. He's
he's up
convincing.
there. I mean, he's giving Liam Neeson a run for his money in terms of the older action hero.
This whole movie is kind of a weird thing because, like, the first film feels like an origin story for a character who has this elaborate backstory. You know, he was some sort of secret agent, and Melissa Leo was his, and Bill Pullman were their contacts. You know, and it's like, and so this movie is doing the ... You think that we know enough about him, he can just go and kick some butt, you know, and it's like now instead we're like delving deeper into the backstory that didn't matter before and into his wife and into what the situation with Melissa Leo and Bill Pullman. What happens to Bill Pullman in this movie? He kind of like
he's
disappears.
gone for about
Wasted,
45
you know,
minutes.
wasted. I feel like that was maybe a collateral damage from some cuts in the edit room because like his character was completely wasted, as was Melissa Leo's to an extent, even though it was a crucial role. But I just felt overall like the movie was slow going. At the beginning, like for the first 30 or 40 minutes, I'm like, what is this plot of this movie? Is there a plot for this film?
Robert McCall gets 2 introductions. There's a cold open on a train in Turkey where he slaughters a bunch of bad guys. Then there's another cold open in a Boston high-rise where he cuts up a bunch of yuppies with their own credit cards. These are entertaining sequences, but we don't need 2 cold opens in one movie. It's just padding.
And they must have added one because, I mean, how does this guy who's working as a Lyft driver get to Turkey? I'm confused by that, too. I mean, there's something about the logic of this movie that doesn't make sense to me. He might have a second house, you know. It's,
he clearly has money somewhere because it's implied that he was able to save a bookstore that was going out of business.
Oh, no, he saved the daughter of the bookstore. That's not a spoiler, it's the opening scene.
I had gleaned that they said that they were going to close the bookstore, but something had changed.
Yeah,
like
that's the daughter that he's rescuing.
Okay, I thought he had sort of like donated money to keep the bookstore in business.
Yeah, but even so, you know, as the movie's progressing, then it finally kicks in. I feel like it's a little too late. And even though the movie just sort of has this big like showdown during a Category 5 hurricane, which was definitely well executed, no pun intended. But by then I just felt like it didn't save the movie. The movie didn't work for me. I liked the character. You said it best, Whitney. I liked the character. I didn't like the movie. What's your letter grade?
Geez, like a C?
Yeah, me too. A C.
Also a C.
Also a C.
If I'm feeling generous, maybe a C+, but right now it's a C.
A C, C+, it's all the same. You know, it's a C. Moving on to another sequel. Here we go again, indeed, with Mamma Mia. Here we go again, directed by Ol Parker. The movie stars Lily James, Amanda Seyfried, Pierce Brosnan, and Cher. Sophie, played by Amanda Seyfried, learns about her mother's past, which we see through flashbacks, and well, gee, that's the movie, isn't it, Peter?
Well, right. I mean, like if Equalizer 2, which we saw in a double bill, so it was Mamma Mia and Equalizer 2 back to back. I mean,
wait, which was first?
May I Equalizer?
Oh,
May I recommend to everybody that be what you do at the movies? Is you know, see these two.
See them late at night because I want to hear about the dream you had after watching those two back to back.
But this is a movie that is nothing but pleasant, almost like disgustingly so. There's no conflict. It's like, you know, it's just like, you know, I've opened a hotel and I hope people come, and maybe my grandmother will drop in by surprise, and maybe my mom, who Did like Meryl Streep get like Ebola between the first movie and the second one? She's not in this one, or is she?
Or is
it's
she?
Confusing, you know.
You know, the thing about Mamma Mia 2 is the first movie came out in 2008. It made $144 million domestically. You know, like a quintessential jukebox musical type of movie that worked very well. It was so pleasant. It was so positive. It was so infectiously fun and entertaining. Everyone's having a good time on the screen. that fun is infectious. Plus, you got the score, the music. ABBA. Who doesn't love the music? Even if you don't say you don't like ABBA, the fact is you really do. So in terms of here we go again. I mean, that really the shoe fits in terms of the title, because is it a necessary sequel? Absolutely not. Is it entertaining and engaging and fun and infectiously, you know, charming? Yeah, it is. And Lily James, some of the casting, because during the flashback scenes you have Lily James playing young Meryl Streep, you have Josh Dillon playing young Stellan Skarsgård, Hugh Skinner as young Colin Firth, and Jeremy Irvine as young Pierce Brosnan. And the treats there were the subtleties that they picked up on the actors that they were embodying. It was kind of fun to see, and you know, the music is great, the musical numbers, and then the piece de resistance is Cher showing up as Sophie's grandmother. And I mean, again, not necessarily like a sequel that everyone wanted to see or everyone was really asking for, but they got it, and you know what? It's fun. I enjoyed it.
Right. I mean, you've also got this hilarious thing where, like, you know, Cher and Meryl are like contemporaries in Silkwood, and now they're mother-daughter or something. You know, it's like I mean, I want the flashback where the young Cher plays, you know, a bigger part, or you know, but the casting of the young people is strange. It actually took me a while, just to figure out what I was watching. I thought this was, I didn't understand that was for a while that was the story of young Meryl Streep, because the actors are so different looking and acting. There are no mannerisms in common, except for the one who plays the young Christine Baranski is doing Christine Baranski.
She looks just like her too.
And she's amazing.
Yeah, she actually looks like her. Lily James, not so much, but I still like, I mean, she was lovely, you know? I mean, you know, you can't go wrong, especially when you have a car alarm buzzing during your award show.
A complaint I heard about the first Mamma Mia raised over and over again was that the directors allowed all of the actors to do their own singing, and not all of the actors are professional singers, and it really showed. Was that a problem this time as well, or did they go with people who were a little bit more song and dance oriented?
In the first movie, Pierce Brosnan was not the greatest singer. But
he's still not the greatest.
He's still not. And, you know, not all the actors are the greatest singers, but again, it's the infectious fun. I mean, you see everyone dancing in the choreographed scenes, and obviously the setting was like paradise. So to that extent, it was fun. I enjoyed myself. You know, what would be your letter grade for Mamma Mia? Here we go again.
B-.
Yeah, I give it like a B+, just because I went in with super low expectations, and in the end, it really won me over. And even though a lot of some of the music is the same, you know, they definitely re-sing some of the songs. But
it's refreshing that they dig up enough new songs and they use them well, and the way they use Mamma Mia is actually kind of like listening to the lyrics this time around. You know?
Yeah, I give it a B+. Yeah, I definitely give it a B+. Now, moving on to a film that opened the 2018 Sundance Film Festival is Blindspotting, directed by Carlos Lopez Estrada. Cast is David Diggs and Rafael Casal, who also co-wrote the screenplay. They're friends in real life. David Diggs plays Colin, who has 3 days left on probation. He's just trying to stay out of trouble. But what happens when he witnesses a police shooting? What's he do about it? That's just the beginning of his problems in Blindspotting. And, well, Peter, I'm going to start with you because I know you really love this movie.
I do. I mean, if I see a better movie this year, I will be astonished. And I will be delighted. I mean, I always want to discover stuff. But, I mean, to start out the year at Sundance with a movie as strong as this, David Diggs is, you know, a Tony winner from Hamilton. He played Thomas Jefferson in Lafayette, and he's the one who is, I mean, he's a spoken word artist, and he basically raps all the dialogue in that show. And here he's getting to do with his longtime friend, Rafael Casal. The two of them wrote this movie together, and they did it. It's not a musical per se, but it does this thing where it breaks into sort of a world where it's okay to freestyle, to rap, and it's like, it's a bold choice in a movie that's really engaging with all sorts of really relevant contemporary issues from a perspective of color. It's set in Oakland, and it's about gentrification, it's about race relations, it's about police brutality, and it's about class, as much as it is about skin. And, it builds to a confrontation between these two friends, not between them and their environment necessarily. And they also confront, the police and things like that. But I mean, I think that scene between the two of them is the scene that makes the movie.
I know what scene you're talking about, and I completely agree. And it's sort of almost like a reversal of roles in the way that the discussion takes place. I don't want to say too much about it, but Whitney.
Well, it's incredibly up to date, those discussions. It's very, very much of the moment. This is also the second film this summer I mentioned, Sorry to Bother You, about sort of racial tension specifically in Oakland. So yeah, there's something going on this summer that Oakland is like the flashpoint for all of these important discussions to be had. But yeah, it feels very natural. I did like the relationship between the two. You could tell that they had had a long relationship before all of this. And it brought up a lot of sort of really salient things that a lot of films are afraid to address. There's a toddler character who is trained to say, don't shoot, when confronted with a police officer. And dealing with that aura of fear is a very important theme of all of this. And I love all of the hipster bashing that goes on. You mentioned that this is sort of not necessarily a critique, just an acknowledgement of all of the gentrification that's going on in a lot of big cities. That's something anybody who lives in a big city can kind of relate to. How, your local, juice shop is now selling like kale smoothies for $10 a pop.
I agree with you. I mean, I liked the film a lot. I think it was definitely provocative, and it was bursting with energy and urgency. My only real issue with the film, and when I saw it at Sundance, I remember because I looked back on my notes, and then I just saw it again last night to refresh, to be in the moment when talking about it, is there's a bit of a shift in tones. Sometimes it's funny and sort of comedic, and then it's very, very serious and shocking in some ways. And sometimes I felt like the shift in tones was abrupt, and it didn't feel like a very even film. It felt a little unfocused. But there's still a whole lot more that I liked about the film. The chemistry, and definitely the gentrification of Oakland, the way Oakland felt like a character in the film. And in some ways, it felt like it reminded me a little of Do the Right Thing.
I think that's a really good analogy. It's not the same movie, but in the way that that's about a neighborhood and about this kind of flashpoint between groups. And it's no coincidence that it's Oakland. This is this is where Fruitvale Station and the Oscar Grant shooting took place. I mean, it's like this is part of the fabric of that community. Also, that gentrification is happening. It's reflecting that. The last of these kind of like amazing music clubs closed down a couple years ago. And you've basically this music community of which these two characters are a part. And the way that they express themselves in verse, that's part of the Oakland fabric as well. But for me, the thing you're saying about the tones is correct. I mean, you're right. That is a way to describe the film. That's one of the things that it's maybe. I always hate to invoke Tyler Perry because it gets me in trouble. But it's like, I'm fascinated by Tyler Perry, and I think there are things that he does well. And one of the things he does is he reflects the fact that in life there are these weird changes, and from like you'll be, weeping at your parents' funeral, and then something funny will happen. And it's like, that is the way I experience life, and it's something that movies which are stuck in their genre, or whatever their little narrow lane is, don't reflect. And the idea that Carlos Lopez Estrada, this first-time director, is capable of kind of navigating that, and he does all of these kind of things in these single-shot scenes. There's this great one inside a house that they've been hired to empty out, and they're singing or kind of rapping there, and yet it's not the slightest bit showy for me. He stays out of the movie's way, and he lets the characters and the situation and the words, really be front and center. I mean, this movie just, I've seen it 3 times now, and I adore it.
I feel like I still need to ruminate because I only saw this last night, and there's still a lot going on in here. But yeah, I agree with you about sort of the Tyler Perry tone, where this character who is just having sort of a boring day at work, and then something terrifying will happen, and then his friend will make a joke, and the tension will break, and that's the way your day goes. It doesn't feel like it's having mood swings. It feels like it's feeling this man's moods as the day progresses. all of the characters are really terrific. They both have various, they're at various stages in their romantic relationships, and those feel very believable. To repeat what you said, it's not showy. There's not a moment where they can sort of stand up and have that showcase moment, even though there are these big climaxes at the end.
For sure.
They do feel like they are born directly out of the hearts of these people.
What's your letter grade?
It's an A.
A for you?
I'm a little high on it right now. It might settle, but right now it's an A.
Seeing it 3 times, where do you stand?
Are you allowed an A++? I don't
Yes,
know.
you are.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow. Well, there you go. That is a ringing endorsement. I give it an A as well. Yes. So Blindspotting is exactly another film, just like 8th Grade, what Sundance is all about, and exactly the type of film that needs support from reviewers and from film journalists. So people go see them in theaters where movies like this need to be seen. Support indie films. I mean, yeah, you can go see Avengers, you could see Deadpool, you could see Star Wars, you could see whatever you want. You know, those kinds of movies serve their purpose, but so do these. And Blindspotting is exactly the kind of movie that does deserve to be seen. It's a great film. An A, A++, A. So see Blindspotting. Now moving on to a Blu-ray, and it's streaming, and it's on iTunes. It's a movie you probably missed because it only made about $60 million domestic, but I thought it was hilarious. It's called Blockers, written and directed by Kay Cannon, who wrote Fever Pitch. Movie stars Leslie Mann, John Cena, Catherine Newton, Geraldine Viswanathan, and this is a teen comedy about a bunch of girls who want to lose their virginity on prom night, but their parents are not going to let that happen. I thought this movie was hilarious, and I thought it deserved better. What'd you think of Blockers?
It was a surprise. That sort of sex comedy setup sounds like it's just going to be raunchy and little else. And the premise of these parents trying to protect their daughter's innocence sounds hopelessly backward. It sounds like something from the 1950s. We don't want our children having sex. But the film never gives them any leeway. They are never doing the right thing, and the film repeats to them constantly that they are never doing the right thing. And the relationships the teenagers are having is actually far more responsible than the parents are giving them credit for. Geraldine Viswanathan is a star.
She stood out in this movie.
You need to keep an eye on this young woman because she is
great.
going places.
I completely agree.
But that we finally have a Hollywood comedy that is calling Hollywood comedies on their crap was also additionally refreshing. I feel like I've seen characters like John Cena's character, or John Cena. The sort of doting, worried, sex-negative, really hand-wringing type of dad in a lot of Adam Sandler films, where, particularly the film Blended, if you ever saw that one, where Bella Thorne plays his daughter, and he is unbelievably uptight about her growing into her sexuality.
But it's good. I mean, he's good at it. You know, I mean, like, I like when John Cena goes for it. Like
but John Cena goes for it, but he's not allowed to be the sympathetic character. He's in the wrong.
Right, that's true.
And the journey is about how he discovers how he's in the wrong, and he has to learn to grow up and let his daughter be his daughter. And I feel like that flies in the face of a lot of the old Hollywood conventions that we've had in the last couple of years. So it felt really good to watch something like Blockers, which is also hilariously crass. All of the performances are pretty terrific, and all of the characters are interesting and unique and believable in their own way.
All right, Peter, Blockers, does it hold up?
I didn't see this until this week, you know, because of the recommendation. It sort of fell through the cracks for me, and it was surprising. It was a discovery. I think it was marketed as something different, as sort of like the female American Pie or something like that.
That's exactly how it was marketed,
and as a Judd Apatow movie, but it's not 2 hours and 40 minutes long. It's, I mean, it's tight and it's funny, and but it's really, like, I think, a brave movie. It's calling. I mean, if you've ever taken a girl to prom, you've met John Cena. I mean, that's the dad of every date who doesn't want her daughter to lose her virginity that night or whatever. That's it's not a 50s thing for me. I'm a little older than today's teenagers, but like that's a familiar thing of kind of like this wait and save it kind of thing. But this movie is calling the world and Hollywood and media on kind of the double standard as it applies to women.
Yep.
And
in dialogue too, they have like open discussions about it.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, they're standing up to their parents, and they're standing up to John Cena, saying like, you know, well, what was prom like for you? You know, it's like, and they're all in their heads. These parents are reliving their own prom nights and how great and sexually charged they may have been for them. But in the middle of this movie is like a queer coming out story that is like mind-blowing, and that, like, you know, you've got one of the young women, you know, senses that she's a lesbian, but is being pressured by everything around her to maybe go along with the virginity thing.
Yep.
And the twist, which is revealed kind of early on, and, you know, I feel like it's fair to say, is that her dad knows, and he's the most, you know, woke person in the room.
Doesn't.
And it's like
in all other regards, he's sort of projected as a loser, but he knows his daughter better than anybody.
And this movie followed on the heels of Love, Simon, and in some ways it's just like such it's a better movie to begin with. It's funnier, and it's like sometimes I feel like it can be a mistake when dealing with identity related issues to make it the story, as opposed to make it part of the fabric of a story. And the idea that she's one of 3 characters, I just think this movie, you know, to be seen by teenagers today, it's got so many things that they can relate to, but so many kind of messages that aren't, you know, preachy, but, you know, helpful.
You talk about Love, Simon, and there's also a film streaming called Alex Strangelove, and now the subplot here in Blockers. And I agree completely with your assessment here, especially because I was really down with the gender reversal here, but also with the diversity represented here.
Yeah,
and then you've got the subplot about this girl who may be coming out and not sure how to do it. This movie juggles a lot. You have 2 storylines. You have the parent storyline, and you have the teenager storyline, and everything works well together. They play off each other. It doesn't feel like 2 different films. The movie's a lot better, especially on a second viewing, where you're able to like bring everything in, because there's a whole lot of movie here. You know, sometimes the crudeness tried a little too hard to be crude and R-rated, like the American Pie thing, but I still thought it was very, very good. I give this movie a B+, A- is where I'm standing on this film. How about you?
Yeah, I'd be a B+ on it as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
How about you?
Also B+.
Wow.
Yeah, I streamlined the Gina Gershon story a little bit more, and it would have been a better story. But yeah.
Well, guys, I'm very, very excited. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people follow you on Twitter, Instagram, on social media?
I'm Ask Debruge, my last name, and you can find all my reviews on Variety.com.
And how about you, Woody?
I co-host 2 podcasts. You can find me on the critically acclaimed podcast, that's Film Reviews. You can find me on Canceled Too Soon, which is short-lived television series reviews. Both of those co-hosted with William Bibiani. And my writing can be found on IGN and also the critically acclaimed.net website.
Well, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at MovieMantz, and be sure to follow all of us and let us know what you thought of these movies. Tweet us and make sure you hashtag Movie Review Talk and tag Collider Video. Make sure you make sure you share this video podcast with all your friends. We love talking about movies. You know, I love sort of the Siskel and Ebert format of reviewing films. I want to keep doing this every week, but I need your help. Please do share this video podcast, and please listen to the audio podcast on iTunes on Podcast One. So please like and share that and review that. And let's see. I also want to just give a very big shout out to our good friend Collider. Please, our thoughts and prayers to John Schnepp and Holly Schnepp, and sending all our very, very best to the Schnepps and their families. We love you. We absolutely love you.
You know, Scott, like, sorry to jump in, but like, you know, I wrote for Collider, like, I don't know, like 12 years ago. It's so much fun to be back here.
Oh, well, welcome back.
You can find a couple of my top 10 lists, like way back where on the, like, you know, Collider. Like, it's really cool to see this site grow, and it's thanks to the viewers, it's thanks to the readers. You know, it's anyway. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, well, thank you. Welcome back. Absolutely, and thank you, Whitney. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir,
so
for having me.
Next time on Collider, Tom Cruise is back and ready to party in Mission Impossible Fallout. This movie series is 22 years old, 6 movies in, and they are still, the hits just keep on coming. Until next time, here's looking at you, kid.
Hey everybody, Mark Ellis here. Thanks for watching this episode. You want to watch more? Then click up here. Or you can click right here for more great content from Collider. If you haven't subscribed to Collider Video, do so right now and share this vid with your friends. Thanks for watching.